New developments tonight in the Hunter Biden saga. A cache of over 128,000 emails from his laptop are now on a searchable database, courtesy of former Trump aide Garrett Ziegler. And just today, NBC News published its analysis of a copy of Hunter's laptop, his iCloud account, as well as incorporating documents released by the Senate Republicans. First of all, kudos to NBC for taking this seriously. They were one of the only ones who devoted this kind of manpower to evaluating the new information. According to that report, Hunter managed to rake in about $11 million total between 2013 and 2018, while Hunter, an attorney, was serving on the board of Ukrainian gas company Burisma and was involved in a joint venture involving a shady Chinese tycoon. But few of the deals Hunter was trying to set up ever came to fruition. We also know now that thanks to the help of Hollywood attorney Kevin Morris, Hunter has fully paid back taxes he owed to the IRS, total amount being $2 million. Here's what we also now know. There is an active federal probe into possible tax fraud, money laundering, foreign lobbying crimes. Prosecutors reportedly looking into multiple international financial and business dealings involving Hunter Biden, dating back to when Joe Biden was still vice president, with an apparent focus on Hunter's business dealings in Ukraine, China, and Kazakhstan. They're also said to be digging into the possibility that Hunter shifted money around from company to company in order to hide his real tax liability. There are also serious questions about what Hunter did to earn some of this money, particularly when it comes to his business dealings with Chinese firms. It's still unclear what exactly he did to earn that money from the Chinese partners, and that lack of clarity has led to questions about national security, business ethics, possible criminal wrongdoing. Hunter made $5.8 million, according to NBC, more than half his total earnings from 2013 to 2018 from two deals with Chinese business interests, including CEFC, Chinese Energy, a massive oil and gas company that had financing from government development banks, ties to the Chinese Communist Party, according to the people who studied the firm. Hunter also received a $1 million retainer to represent a CEFC official who was later sentenced to 3 years in prison after being convicted on bribery and money laundering charges. And then there's that mysterious 2.8-carat diamond a CEFC executive gave to Hunter after a meeting about a project that, again, never came to be. As for Burisma, between 2014 and 2019, Hunter Biden held a Burisma board seat, was paid around $50,000 a month. Now, it's not just possible financial crimes that prosecutors seem to be interested in either. Authorities are said to be looking into whether Hunter Biden or others violated foreign lobbying laws through work with a PR firm called Blue Star Strategies. Burisma had hired Blue Star to help bolster its reputation after State Department officials criticized its founder. But despite all of what's been revealed about Hunter's finances and foreign business dealings, one thing that has not been uncovered is any sort of wrongdoing by President Biden. Nonetheless, Republicans have made it clear that if they win back the House of Representatives in November, they'll continue to probe whether any of Hunter's income went to his dad. But finally, everything from the hard drive appears to have been released. It seems no more drip, drip, drip of information. It's all on the table. So where do we go from here? Let's bring in former federal prosecutor Shan Wu, who's been following this case very closely. Shan, good to see you again. Appreciate it. All right, so, in terms of what we learned now, we have a little bit of a better sense of the totality of the numbers. These questions remain about why these Chinese entities were paying him all this money for no sort of deal, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the smoke that's around this. A little hard to tell how much fire there really is, but that's the smoke. I mean, it's obvious that he was sought after because of who he is, whose son that he is. But I think what we have to remember, Dan, is that in and of itself, it might be distasteful, maybe unfair, but it's not at all clear whether there's anything criminal involved there. There's nothing criminal in being solicited because I'm the son of a famous person with connections. But if I do something with those connections, and I'm paid to do something with those, and that's not disclosed, that could be criminal. So that's what the evidence has got to point towards if there's going to be a charge.
Now, is this investigation taking a long time as far as you're concerned? I mean, should we have resolution by now, or do you think that this is a fairly normal time frame?
White-collar investigations can take a long time to build. This is not a fast one, but I do think what we don't know about is the problems they have had in authenticating this evidence. I mean, as you said, kudos to NBC for doing this work on it, and that's, I think, most of their work had to be in trying to figure out, with the bad chain of custody for the laptop, what is authentic and what isn't. So I think the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and their forensic people have had to do a lot of work to make sure that they're looking at real, legitimate electronic communications.
And how long more, we don't know exactly how long more the investigation will go on, but it's now, what is it? At least it's getting close to 2 years now?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to predict, but it seems at this point, like you said, everything's on the table now. I don't think there's anything missing from it, so they ought to be able to come to their charging decision, yay or nay. And I think one thing the Biden administration is doing correctly is just to be hands-off. They've let the same prosecutor hold over, and that's what they should do, just let that investigation run its course.
How significant is it that this Hollywood attorney paid the $2 million, which is a big number, in back taxes that Hunter Biden had owed?
It's significant in two ways. One, obviously, it shows that he had failed to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And number two, it's significant because that's pretty standard to do. I mean, the first thing that a white-collar defense lawyer is going to do is, hey, if there's a debt here at the IRS, let's pay that and try to avoid a criminal charge. So that's pretty standard in tax cases. If the client can afford to pay it, let's get it paid.
Well, but what is the standard as to when it becomes criminal? Because, I have people calling in my radio show all the time saying to me, well, wait a second. It's already $2 million that he's admitting that he didn't pay. Where do you draw the line between civil and criminal on something like this?
Yeah, it's very fuzzy, Dan. It's a great question. It really goes to intent. And typically what you'll see is if there's a pattern of not paying or understating or hiding assets, that's where you'll end up with the criminal intent. A one-time failure to pay, even if it's a large amount, usually that can be fixed by paying it back. Here, it looks like there may have been conduct that went over a couple of years, if not more, and that's probably what has their antenna up. So it's really the course of action, what kind of pattern is involved.
One big thing out there that you don't know that you're looking for an answer to?
I would say it's the question of money laundering. There was this artwork that was being sold, and while there's nothing wrong with selling artwork, I think the White House made a blunder by trying to step into that and trying to make it more anonymous. They may have been concerned it looks bad if he knows, who's buying the artwork. It could affect the family favoring certain people. But by them taking a step into it, it made it look worse. And things like art, diamonds, things like that are often used as part of the money laundering, the so-called layering section of it. So that's what I'll be looking for more evidence about.
I mean, I'll tell you, if someone had said to me, yeah, Hunter Biden got a huge diamond by some Chinese executive who he never did a deal with, I'd say, come on, stop it. Of course that didn't happen. That's just made up. And it's like, you got a diamond. It's like, what? Anyway, Shan Wu, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.